Hello, faithful. Welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Mal Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be talking Diamador Lenoir's well-deserved extension, where he ranks among cornerbacks in terms of average annual value, what it means for the secondary, and pairing him with Renardo Green for at least the next 3 seasons. How the secondary might transition to being the strength of the 49ers defense instead of the defensive line. We're going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to be talking about the youth movement on defense that has occurred already this year, which will be supplemented again by the draft next year and free agency, along with some veteran free agent subtractions, which we're going to talk about. We'll get into some injuries heading into the Seahawks game, couple roster moves that you should know about. Then we're going to dive into the Seahawks at the 49ers. We're going to recap the game from October in Seattle, go over some of Seattle's better players, offensive and defensive rankings. We're going to be talking keys to the game, and I will make a prediction. All 49ers, obviously. Again, guys, let's get right into it. So the Niners are on a 2-game winning streak. After beating both Dallas and Tampa Bay, Seattle is up next, and it could be 3 straight against the NFC, which will be huge for tiebreakers if needed, and getting another NFC West win over Seattle will be big as well. But before we get into the game, the biggest news so far of the week, and I can't imagine something being bigger between now and game day, is Diamador Lenoir signing a well-deserved 5-year, $92 million contract extension with the team. It averages out to be $18.4 million per year. That means DMO is with the team through the 2029 season, and that is his age 30 season. DMO, the hyena, extremely well-deserved in terms of the flexibility, the aggressiveness, the short-term memory, the confidence that he plays with. Not the biggest cornerback at 5'10", about 192, not the fastest cornerback in the world, wasn't the most fluid cornerback coming out in the draft a few years ago out of Oregon. He is, I hate to say a self-made player for someone that was actually drafted versus someone that maybe didn't have a lot of experience, was undrafted, started on the practice squad, and became a star. Someone like Victor Cruz from the Giants, a decade or so ago. But the 5th round being the Niners' money round, and yet again finding a gem in Diamador Lenoir, starting obviously out as a backup, showing his worth, winning the nickel cornerback slot, or at least fighting for it the past couple seasons, but then really showing that inside-outside flexibility that makes him a valuable member to the team and the secondary, especially now with Charvarius Ward missing the Tampa Bay game, and there's the very good possibility that he misses this game with Seattle, obviously still dealing with the grief in the aftermath of the tragic passing of his 1-year-old daughter. This contract, when I first heard about it, a buddy texted it to me, and I thought, first I got the math wrong. I'm like, $16 million a year isn't that bad. And it winds up being 18.4, which really isn't that bad as well. 12th cornerback in terms of pay. Now, you can argue where DMO falls on the cornerback ranking scale. I don't think there's a non-49er fan or maybe a media member that sees the team, in and out every day that would rank DMO as a top 10 or top 12 cornerback. And that's okay. That's honestly okay. It doesn't matter where he's slotted, any sort of cornerback power rankings that, people put out on social media or anything like that. He is worth the money. And I'm wondering if San Francisco learned their lesson from Kittle, from Warner, from Bosa, from Debo, from Ayuk, that you don't need to let these things drag out. Forget the summer, but drag out into the spring, the late spring, or even beyond the season starting. Now, Demo turned down a contract extension before this season started, which would have me believe that whatever the Niners offer wasn't close to 5 years, $92 million. But it's a smart move on both sides. And that was, San Francisco's MO, and now it's DMO. But it was San Francisco's MO for several years about signing homegrown talent a year early. Don't let them play out their final year. Don't let them get into free agency. Or if you do, be sure to sign them sometime between the end of the season and when the new year kicks off in the beginning of March before free agency hits. And I think where he slots in terms of average salary, I think is very fair. So let's start at the top. And you have a couple corners making $24 million a year. So it's Jalen Ramsey of the Dolphins and Patrick Surtain II of the Broncos. Fair. Now, Ramsey had a shorter term deal. I think it was a 3-year deal because he is now 30 years old. Surtain, obviously, I think much younger in his third or fourth year in the league. Then the next tier are corners making $20 million a year, and that would be the Packers' Jair Alexander, AJ Terrell of the Falcons, Denzel Ward of the Browns. Then you get in the $19.5 million range. Marlon Humphrey of the Ravens, Trayvon Diggs of the Cowboys, Marshawn Lattimore traded to the Commanders, a little bit older in his, I think, approaching or right about 30, 31. Tyson Campbell of the Jaguars, L'Jarius Sneed, who's been a flop with the Titans, and Jalen Johnson of the Bears. So you have 11 ahead of them. And then you have players like Darius Slay and Bradbury of the Giants, or maybe he's of the Eagles, somewhere in the NFC East, I forget, players underneath him that are still, good players in their late 20s or just about 30 years old. DMO being 26, young, and getting a young player. We're not going to say the Niners got him to take less. I think the sides came together and realized, hey, this is somebody that, this is someone that we want. And for DMO, this is a place that he wants to be. And Kyle came out in his interview when he was asked about DMO's extension, and his words were, DMO is everything that we want in a 49er. He plays with attitude. He punches above his weight. He plays above his size. He doesn't back down. Is he going to give up plays? Absolutely. Every cornerback does. DMO's not a lockdown, shutdown corner. Charvarius Ward, at his peak when he was with San Francisco, I wouldn't say that. That's a rarity in the NFL. That's a Deion Sanders. That's a Darrelle Revis. That's a Sauce Gardner before this year, type of thing. But he is a very, very good, very dependable, very flexible cornerback for San Francisco that they can move around. And of course, when you sign someone early, when you sign someone during the season, your mindset as the team is, all right, well, inflation costs are only going to go up. Even for the United States economy, when inflation wasn't 6 or 7%, 2% is really good inflation, but that still means things are going up. There's never going to be deflation in a market. The closest that the NFL experienced was the running back market a couple of years ago, but you saw, the contract McCaffrey got, the extension and added money, an extra $3 million a year that McCaffrey got. The recent extension Alvin Kamara signed, Saquon Barkley with the Eagles. You have to be a special player. And those signings, 2 of those 3 make sense. McCaffrey and Barkley. For Kamara, that's a go-nowhere franchise. So to extend him another 3 or 4 years, whatever it was, costing over $10 million a year, I know you want to accumulate good players, but could that money have been allocated elsewhere? Because that's, I just said it's a go-nowhere franchise. Like the Saints are nearing irrelevancy, in the NFL with or without Alvin Kamara. Is he a difference maker? They have 2 or 3 wins with him. They would have the same amount of wins without him. He's not as vital to that team as McCaffrey is to the Niners, as Barkley is to the Eagles, and to the same degree, but a lesser pay scale, as Derrick Henry is to the Ravens. How many teams are kicking themselves now that they did not, like the Cowboys, pursue Derrick Henry? But maybe for the Cowboys' sake, it's better off that they didn't spend that money, because they would have been garbage otherwise. And chances are Dak Prescott very well may have gotten hurt anyway. So signing early, saving money. I don't know who the free agent cornerbacks, the big ones, are going to be after the season. Now, Sauce is available for an extension. He was been the subject of maybe some potential trade talk between him and wide receiver Garrett Wilson of the Jets. I don't know what's going to happen with the Aaron Rodgers experiment, and I don't mean to get off on a Jets tangent, but just we're talking about cornerbacks and what they're going to get paid. If Sauce draws a line in the sand that he wants to get paid, he'll get paid, should get paid more than, Jalen Ramsey and Patrick Surtain or thereabouts, right? 24, $25.5 million, whatever it may be. But if Rodgers doesn't come back, or if the Jets decide to not bring Rodgers back and cut him, trade him, whatever the out avenue is, Sauce would be the one that you would trade, not Garrett Wilson. Why? Because if you're going to bring in another quarterback, especially a young quarterback, you want a young receiver for him to grow with. And if Rodgers goes, I don't know if that means Devontae Adams goes also, but you can get a mini King's ransom for Sauce Gardner, right? There's 3-7 with him and Rodgers and Adams and a lot of other talent on the defense that isn't playing up to par. So wherever Sauce Gardner lands next year, and it'll probably still be with the Jets, he's going to be 25 plus. And that's not to say that Sauce Gardner at 25 makes DMO at 18 look like a bargain, but it just winds up being, would you rather have DMO at 18 plus another player for $7 million? Let's just say it's another defensive end or a D tackle or offensive guard, versus just the cornerback. That's when you break up money like that, you just have to think about roster construction and where you can put those savings to. Now, what this means ultimately is fellow cornerback Charvarius Ward is gone. His contract is up after this season. He's 28 years old, only a couple, years older than DMO. It's not like he's that much older, but he will be 29 at the start of next season. And he does carry a dead cap hit of $12.3 million next season. So that also made me wonder, when they make the choice between DMO and Charvarius Ward, do they put any weight in potentially re-signing Ward to another 3 years, just by virtue of when you renegotiate or when he signs that extension, you can bring down that $12.3 million dead cap hit to maybe something half that. So the Niners could sign Charvarius Ward and save, and it would cost them less on the cap in 2025 than it would just for DMO in 2025, because whatever DMO's cap hit's going to be, say it's $3 million next year, it's his $3 million plus Charvarius Ward, who's not on the team, his $12.3 million. So you have $15.3 million devoted to one cornerback, versus if they'd resigned Charvarius Ward and dropped his cap hit in half, they'd have $6 million devoted to one cornerback. But they went younger. I think this is the right decision to make. And pairing him with rookie standout cornerback Renardo Green for at least the next 3 years, Renardo Green is under contract for the next 3 years, is going to be exciting for 49er fans to watch. And Renardo Green, I thought this stat was wrong, or just in relation to rookie cornerbacks. But Renardo Green is the number 2 cornerback per Pro Football Focus in the league, not just rookies, in the league, with an 84.2 defensive grade and an 84.0 coverage grade. Number 2 in the league. Now, crazy enough, Diamador Lenore is in the high 30s or low 40s in terms of where he's ranked. So I think this is where all of us, now we watch the games, we've seen the big plays DMO's made this year and the past couple years, and obviously how he's grown and evolved since coming into the league. Anything with analytics, one, you have to take with a grain of salt, and two, you can find stats to shape and support your argument any which way you want. Are we going to say, is any of us going to sit here and say Renardo Green right now is a better cornerback than Diamador Lenore? No. Green's had a very promising first half to his first year in the NFL, much like a lot of other rookie players have had in this so far so good 2024 draft class. But that's not to say that he doesn't hit adversity in the second half of the season. That is not to say that there couldn't be a a sophomore slump next year, right? It happens. So while the arrow is pointing up right now, I think we all just slow down in terms of when we see any sort of advanced analytical stats, PFF or others, in terms of how things are going to be rated or how players, teams, situational football is graded out and rated because there is something called the gut and the eye test. And the eye test to me says that DMO gets a well-deserved extension and he's going to be with the 49ers for the next 5 seasons. And that leads me to, the discussion of not because of this signing and not just because Renardo Green is playing well. It's in contrast or in combination with the D-line not being as dominant as it's been in years past, which makes me pose the question, is the secondary now, and now could be today, it could be Sunday against the Seahawks, it could be, 3 or 4 weeks from now when they're back home playing the Bears. But is the secondary now the strength or the strongest unit on the 49ers team instead of the D-line? Now, you can make the argument that maybe it wasn't even the D-line last year. Maybe it was the linebacker core, which is really just Warner and Greenlaw. And hopefully they'll get Greenlaw back within the next, 3 weeks, hopefully, or month at the most. So he has some time, an extra, say 4 games remaining to make an impact on the season without sacrificing, obviously, anything health-wise. But when you look at the secondary, you have DMO getting his extension, 4th year in the league, or third year in the league going to his 4th. Or 4th going to the 5th. Don't hold me to that. Sorry. Renardo Green is a rookie. Jair Brown, 2nd year. Malik Mustafa, 2nd year. Darrell Luter, 2nd year. And I know Luter isn't anything to kind of write home about, but there's youth there. George Odom is the old man on the secondary right now in terms of who's signed for 2025 or beyond. So you have right now for 2025, 3 cornerbacks signed, and they're all very young or pretty young. And you have 3 safeties who are either all very young, pretty young, or, a 28, 29-year-old, however old George Odom is, old hand that's mainly, safety number 3, but more for special teams. I mentioned only, Luter and Odom beyond, the young core. We're going to call it the core 4. I know the Yankees did that. Let's call it, this is the secondary core 4, right? And they're young. They're going to grow together and hopefully get better. Who are free agents? It's at safety. It's Talanoa Hufanga. It's Charvarius Ward, who's definitely not coming back. Isaac Yiadom, Rockyason have the possibility to return, both 28 years old, on modest veteran contracts. I don't think outside of an injury to one of the safeties this year, I don't think there's any path for Talanoa Hufanga to come back. Even if he takes a 1-year prove it type of deal, it would have to be very close to the vet minimum, or maybe double the vet minimum for the Niners, I think, to entertain it. If he's going to do that, maybe it's a $5 or $6 million prove it that you're healthy deal somewhere else. So Hufanga has had a very nice 49er tenure, beset by injuries, most specifically the knee, but that obviously he's out again with the wrist ligament tear. I don't think he's going to be with the organization. If they can bring one of Yiadom or Rockyason back, and I know Isaac Yiadom has his fair share of detractors, but bringing in another more veteran corner, and then I think even in the draft, I can see them going, cornerback or safety again. I think the Niners have a history of drafting corners more often than not, at least under the Lynch and Shanahan regime. Doesn't mean you hit on all of them, but you are taking cracks, and every once in a while, the full draft class is a crack that knocks it out of the park, right? Everybody but Jarrett Kingston making a significant contribution to this team. So the secondary arrow is pointing up. That doesn't mean this is going to be a no-fly zone Legion of Boom 2.0. But for a while, it's not that it was the philosophy, but the way that the Niners were built from the line out, you didn't need a dominant secondary. You needed a competent secondary, not a dominant one, because the thought process was the D-line would get pressure quick enough that your corners, your linebackers in coverage, your safeties will be able to hold up, right? You're not asking anyone to cover for, 2.5, 3.5, 4 seconds. The youth movement on defense has started, and really maybe started last year. We talked about the secondary already. For as long as Warner's been in the league, he's 27, young. He'll be 28 next year. Then you have D. Winters, who right now is in his second year. Tatum Bethune is a rookie. Jalen Graham, I know, was on the 53, let go, now on the practice squad, but he's another, young player. So you have right there, you have your old hand in Warner, who's not really old, and then 3 young linebackers, but this is a position that they can address in free agency or the draft. Dre Greenlaw is the wild card. Again, if he were to take a 1-year prove it deal, it probably couldn't be or shouldn't be that expensive of one. And I think the Niners are probably going to wind up being in better cap situation next year. Right now, $55 million under the cap in 2025 than probably a lot of us are thinking. We know DMO's extension. I don't know if they're going to put any money onto this year. Even though it's a 5-year extension, they could put some money on 2024, obviously some on 2025. But it's not like his first year is going to be a $10 million cap hit. It's probably going to be half that. When Brock gets extended, it's not going to be if he makes $50 million a year, it's not going to be a $50 million cap hit, probably half that. But they do need to obviously save and allocate money to re-signing some free agents that are on the team right now, signing outside free agents, draft class, making sure that you get up to 53 or 90 for training camp, to field the best possible and the deepest possible team that they can. So that's the linebackers, the D-line. Who's the old hand? It's Bosa. Well, it's technically Leonard Floyd, but he's not on the team beyond next year. And who knows, I wouldn't say he's an untouchable for next year unless he has a monstrous second half. If they don't get the 9 or 10 sack Leonard Floyd that has been there for the Bills and other teams the past 3 seasons, then they maybe look at letting him go. You only let him go if you have a viable, better, probably younger, because you're going to find someone younger than 32, 33 next year, and significantly cheaper alternative that can replicate what he's doing. If it's Sam Okwuonu, if it's Yetur Gross-Matos, but on the D line, Bosa is 27, Yetur Gross-Matos is 27, Evan Anderson at D tackle, 22, Kalia Davis, the one that's been here for a couple of years, not Khalil Davis, who actually did get 5 snaps against the Buccaneers. Kalia Davis is under contract for 1 more year. Jordan Elliott's only 26 years old. He's under contract for 1 more year. I mentioned Sam O. I'm sure he's going to get extended. I'm not sure if he's a restricted free agent or not, or what the bidding for him is going to be. But I think he is he showed valuable rotational piece, and he's played inside in that NASCAR package 4-man front with Bosa and Floyd outside, Elliott or Malik Collins inside, with Sam. And Robert Beal in his second year feels like right now just a guy that maybe could be supplanted by someone, in the draft if they go D line early next year. And obviously Drake Jackson, who could not heal from the ruptured Achilles tendon, quickly enough or well enough. Hopefully he comes back to full strength to potentially make an impact on the D-line. I think he's only 24 or 25 years old. So, draft, youth is served on the defense. The Niners, when you think about some of the major players, major stars, Trent Williams, 36, Christian McCaffrey for a running back, I think, 27, 28. Debo, 28 years old. Kittle, 31. Then you obviously have Bosa, 27. Fred Warner, 27. And I'm not saying that those are old players. And I think Fred Warner gets extended. I think George Kittle gets extended. I think Kittle's going to be a Niner lifer. I think they want him. I think Kyle wants him to get to the 10+ year mark with the team. I mean, look, they haven't been able to field a viable number 2 or even number 3 tight end. It's George Kittle all the time. I think he gets extended and Warner get extended in the offseason to lower their cap hits to, I don't want to say accommodate Brock because they have money for Brock. There's enough cap space right now for Brock, but for what else they want to build around him. But I can see in the draft, the Niners going, we're talking just defense now, right? Going cornerback, going D tackle or D end, as in a first or second. They're not going to go cornerback in the first round, but a D tackle, a good D end in the first and or second rounds. If they went line their first 2 picks, would any of us be shocked? No. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was a D lineman in the first and maybe an offensive lineman in the second. Maybe they get a swing tackle competition for McKivitz, a replacement for Aaron Banks on the left-hand side, because I do think he's going to be gone. And if there is good value in the later rounds at safety or linebacker, I think the Niners go there too. I mean, they lucked in. I mean, Tatum Bethune, 7th round pick, you're taking a flyer, right? And they lucked into a 7th round player, sticking on their roster. They lucked into Juwan Jennings, 7th round player. Remember, he started out on the practice squad, sticking on the roster. They lucked into the ultimate luck into a player in Brock Purdy as a 7th round pick. So I'm not expecting, the draft's 5 months away, at 5.5 months away at this rate. So I have been doing mock drafts. I can't lie to you and say that I haven't. I probably will do one tonight just because they're fun, something to do. But I think any position on the defense is open in terms of building depth. But I would say the same thing on the offense also. We'll see how the team looks signing their own free agents or outside free agents before the draft to know where the actual holes are. But I think this is a younger team than people give, younger and young players with talent that probably more folks give it credit for. I don't think when folks think about young teams in the NFL, do they think of the Niners? But this 2024 draft class is going to go a long way to helping the Niners not even be competitive, but being still a force in the NFC West, the NFC, and contending for a Super Bowl. Now, before we get into the Seahawks preview, let's talk injuries. Kittle with some hamstring irritation. Bosa still with his hip. Trent Williams with his ankle hasn't practiced the past 3 practices. Same with Kevin Givens with his groin. Wide receiver Chris Conley, hamstring as well. John Feliciano, his knee. His practice window has been opened, but they haven't made a decision as to when they'll activate him to the 53-man roster. And remember, when that happens, they do need to release someone. And Mitch Wishnowsky, the punter, has a back issue. Now, real quick, before we get into the Wishnowsky impact, I do anticipate Kittle, Bosa, Williams, and Conley to play. I think Givens is a true 50-50 questionable. And again, Feliciano, he'll be great in terms of a backup at the 3 interior line positions, and maybe in time, I know a lot of people want Jake Brendel out of there. Maybe in time later on this season, a change is made, but Kyle and Chris Forrester love Jake Brendel. That would really only happen if there's an injury or if Brendel's play really, even more so, falls off. But because of the Wishnowsky injury, the 49ers signed punter Pat O'Donnell to the practice squad, 33 years old. He's a 45.1 career punting average. And to make room for him on the practice squad, they released T.Y. McGill, who was on the practice squad the past couple seasons and elevated quite a bit and on the active roster some. I wasn't surprised to see that because the Niners are carrying 6 defensive tackles on the 53-man roster. And even if Kevin Givens is still bothered by the groin injury, they still have 5 D tackles that could be active for the Seattle game. And let's roll right into that Seattle game. Niners hosting the Seahawks, 4:05 Eastern. The Niners are a 6.5 point favorite, much like they were at Tampa Bay, which is weird when you think about it. I mean, Tampa Bay being home, you think the spread would be a little bit smaller, or the spread for the Seahawk-Niner game be bigger because of the recent dominance that the Niners have had over Seattle. Let's go back to that game in October, 36-24 victory by the 49ers, capped off by Isaac Guerendo's 70-plus yard run with under 2 minutes to go as the Seahawks were trying to get the Niners to go 3 and out. Punctuated, whether he went down on purpose or not, punctuated by Kyle Juszczyk's 6-yard run to get them up by 12. But remember, that was a game where the Niners were up 29-17, up 12, and Seattle drove down the field, had a chance on 4th down from inside the 15-yard line to really put the game away, and Seattle scored Tyler Lockett on the touchdown reception to make it a 5-point game before Guerendo more or less put it out of reach. But it's a game that the Niners really dominated. They put up 483 total yards, about 100, almost 130 more than Seattle, had a 6-minute advantage in time of possession, and Seattle had 3 turnovers. 2 courtesy of Geno Smith and 1 on the Laviska Shenault kick return fumble before he brought one back all the way to the house right after that. This was almost the coming out party for the young secondary, both Malik Mustafa and Renardo Green having interceptions. Brock Purdy, very strong game, 255 yards, 3 touchdowns. And it was the magic formula, like I've been preaching, under 30 passes. He only threw 28, more than 30 rushes. They ran it 33 times for 228 and a touchdown. That 70-plus yarder made it look good. Otherwise, it would have been 32 rushes for $152, which is still pretty good. Seattle had a concerted effort, or made a concerted effort, to run the ball in the beginning of the game. 20 rushes, but only 52 yards in total as the game got away from them mid-second quarter into the third quarter. Did run for a touchdown. Geno Smith threw it 52 times, 312 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. When Geno Smith throws the ball a lot, good things can happen for an opposing defense. And the Seahawks, they're a team that started hot. We know it, right? Started 3-0, but they played nobody. They played Denver and Bo Nix on their first start. They played Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots. They were playing teams, the Dolphins, without Tua. Skylar Thompson starting there. So 3-0, a very deceiving 3-0. And since then, they've lost 5 of their last 6. Their last 2 losses were at home to the Bills and the Rams in overtime. They are coming off of a bye, trying to get a little bit healthier. Their main star players or main players, Geno Smith leading the league in passing, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet at the running back positions, and you have DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith Njigba, who's been having a really nice sophomore season, and Taylor Lockett at receiver. You have Noah Fant at tight end. They brought in Ernest Jones, the 4th from Tennessee, in a trade for strength of the linebacker position, a little bit more pass rush. You have Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon as 2 of their top 3 corners. They just haven't been able to stop the run. They haven't been able to get after the quarterback as consistently as they would like, and not playing nearly as sticky enough defense as head coach Mike McDonald would like them to, as evidenced by losing 5 of their last 6, and specifically against San Francisco. I was slightly worried about that game because I wasn't sure how much of that Ravens Christmas game that McDonald could emulate, and it happened to be not much, as Brock went for 255, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, and was really in control of that game from beginning to end. Seahawks dealing with some injuries as well. The following players were all questionable: Noah Fant at tight end, right tackle Abraham Lucas, D tackle Leonard Williams, and outside linebacker Boye Mafe. I think all players are tracking to play. And this is a rested team, albeit coming off of a 2-game losing streak. Offensively is where Seattle is obviously more impressive in terms of either side of the ball. Number 9 overall offense in the league. They're the number 1 passing team in the NFL, averaging 268 per game. 27th running the ball, only averaging 91 yards a game, and middle of the road in terms of points, 15th, scoring 23.3 per game. Defensively, overall 25th, 20th against the pass, allowing 218 a game, 26th against the rush, allowing 139, and 23rd in points allowed, allowing 24.6. When we look at the turnover differential, Seattle is -6. The Niners are +3. That is a difference of 9 turnovers between the 2 teams. Keys to the game, guys. I think if the Niners play a clean game, they're going to win this game. And when you think about it too, though, how crazy is it that the Niners dominated time of possession, dominated yards, won the turnover battle 3-0, and it was still a 5-point game with less than 2 minutes to go. Right? Niners didn't make any big mistakes. Niners didn't do anything to beat themselves. They did give up a kick return for a touchdown to give Seattle some life in the second half. But that's why, obviously, winning by 12 looks good. They covered the spread. The game hit the over for those of you that care about that. But the fact that the Niners did, you checked off everything you wanted to check off in terms of things to do to win the game. And they won. And they won by 12. But the fact that the game was a 5-point game with a minute 40 something to go before Isaac Guarendo's big run is still to me concerning. It's still to me proof that nothing's going to be easy for this team. I mean, they got up on this team, by 2 scores. I got up by Dallas 3 scores. They were up 17 going into the fourth quarter. Made us sweat it out at the end. They gave Dallas the ball back up 6 to potentially go down the field and win the game. And Dallas promptly, with Dak Prescott, went 4 and out, and the Niners got the ball back and just ran it out. This is an explosive Seattle team. And, the biggest key for a team that passes the ball with this much frequency and doesn't run the ball well is just make them one-dimensional. Just find the formula that worked in Seattle. Geno will be Geno. The more Geno throws, the more good things, I said it earlier, can happen for a defense. He is not one of the 10, 12, 13 players that over the course of a game will beat a defense that's mainly just rushing 4. And that's key number. It's not even key number 2. This is almost like I'm acquiescing. It's subject number 2, acquiescence number 1. Nick Sorensen, Brian Staley, Kyle Shanahan. I'm okay with you rushing 4 against Geno Smith because Geno's going to Geno. He is not one of those top 10 or 12 quarterbacks that can make San Francisco pay late against Seattle, but it's all against the 49ers, but it's also okay to make adjustments if they find a groove running the ball. It's okay to run blitz more. It's okay to bring in a third defensive tackle. If they're passing the ball well, and this is actually key number 2, if Ward's going to be out, you got to have a plan for it. And it feels like the plan is Isaac Yiadom as, I guess, the outside corner, and Lenore moves inside to the slot. And if that means it's Isaac Yiadom on DK Metcalf, that could be a problem. Metcalf I think he had about 10 targets, 11 targets the first game, but only had 4 or 5 catches. Same with Jackson Smith and Jigba had only had 4 or 5 receptions as well. But Yiadom is obviously a clear downgrade from Charvarius Ward. Some of Ward's best games have come against Seattle and DK Metcalf specifically. If they are going to go spread, the Yiadom on Metcalf, if that is a matchup, or Yiadom on anybody, is a matchup to watch, as is Devondre Campbell in coverage against Noah Fant. I think that's one that Fant could win with regularity. And Shanahan and Sorensen have come out and saying, we've seen, and I think this is fair to say, I think the coaches use hyperbole when describing players, or, that they're being, leaders and not wanting to throw players under the bus. But I think they put extra gloss on a player's improvement or how they're actually performing. Devondre Campbell has improved the past couple of weeks. I wouldn't say it's a monumental improvement, but they played Dallas and Tampa, and now they're playing Seattle again. But Noah Fant and Cade Otton, had a pretty good game for Tampa Bay. The Dallas tight ends, Ferguson, first half, I think had a pretty decent half, but for the most part, the tight ends were kept under wraps, for Dallas. So Yiadom against any receiver and Devondre Campbell against any tight end is what would worry me. The Seahawks running game isn't going to worry me unless they become super stubborn about it. Unless they say, no matter what, no matter where this game goes, score differential wise, we're going to run it 30 times. Because as we've seen with San Francisco, the defense wears down, the run defense specifically, and the pass rush. If it's close and Seattle keeps pounding the rock in the fourth quarter, they're going to start getting chunk plays. They're going to start getting 4, 5, 6, 7 on certain carries and putting Geno Smith in the offense in much more favorable situations. So if it's close and they're committing to the run is a really good chance to break through in the fourth quarter. But overall, I think on defense, the 49ers have had the formula for Geno Smith and this Seahawk offense, which could be very potent, extremely potent. I mean, they went to Atlanta prior to their 2 losses and whooped Atlanta. Got a defensive touchdown, I think, in there at some point. as well. But this is not a team to sleep on, even though I maintain at some point Geno's going to Geno. And on offense, stick to the formula, Kyle. Less than 30 passes, more than 30 runs, and run enough, meaning 30 plus, to make play action lethal. Even without Ayuk, this is Ricky Pearsall's third game. Those short to intermediate throws is key number 2. Lean on the short stuff. Lean on throw in a couple bubble screens, tunnel screens, to Debo, to Cowing, jet sweeps, wide receiver reverses, whether it's to Debo, to Cowing, to Pearsall. We saw that in the Tampa game as well. What we didn't see were too many big shots by Brock, right? I could very well be wrong about this, but maybe the longest air pass of the day was the touchdown to Kittle, where Brock was drifting back, buying time, rolling left, and hit Kittle in the back corner of the end zone to take a 20-17 lead. And that was probably only a 25-ish yard pass, maybe. It wasn't bombs away Brock. And Brock leads the league. I saw a chart or some sort of a plot graph. Brock leads the league in air yards per completion by a lot and is not getting help from Yak all that much at all. Now, did get help from Debo last week against Tampa. Got a lot of help from Ricky Pearsall on that catch and run, which he probably took it 40-ish yards or more Yak-wise. But let's keep bombs away Brock under wraps. I don't think you need to be bombs away Brock to beat any team in this league, right? In terms of shootouts, you can still be explosive and efficient running the ball and utilizing your short to intermediate passing game. It's sexy to score 70 or 80-yard bomb touchdowns. I get it. Or if you have a mobile quarterback like Lamar or Jaden Daniels, you could run for, 40 yards on a pop and get into the end zone. But having that, 8 to 13 play drive where you're staying in front of the sticks, you're keeping the defense on roller skates, keeping them guessing, not knowing if it's going to be run or pass. Highly efficient, dirty word, but I love it. Highly efficient offense, highly efficient quarterback play can still be explosive, even in the absence of having what you're calling explosive plays, 10-yard runs or 20-yard passes. And they did a good job of this the first time against Seattle, protect Brock. This time, Ernest Jones is going to be part of the pass rush, right? He wasn't there before. I'm not going to say that one player is going to make a huge difference, but if he's going to blitz from the inside, outside, he's another player, a different player that the Niners have to account for. Now, they have experience with that since he was with the Rams for several years before this past offseason being traded to the Titans, and his tenure only lasted a half a year because Tennessee's terrible. So you might as well just trade him back, try to get, recoup some assets for him, but keep Brock clean. You keep Brock clean, Brock's going to stay efficient. Brock's going to make the right reads. And I think they have a very good chance to win this game. They're favored by 6.5. I mean, it's not going to be pretty all the time, right? Brock started out slow against Tampa, which drew the ire of a lot of fans. Those of, that you were on Twitter or, checking your Twitter account or doom scrolling, hearing how inaccurate Brock was in the first half. He's not going to be worth even $30 million. He shouldn't get paid more than Baker Mayfield. Shanahan should trade 3 first-round picks to try to go get someone like Cam Ward. That's why you let things play out throughout the course of a game, throughout the course of a month, throughout the course of a half season and a full season to see where this team is at. And Brock is the inverse of the defense. Brock finishes strong. The defense starts strong. And I might have misspoke last podcast. The Niners are not last in the NFL in points allowed in the fourth quarter. I think they're just bottom 3 or bottom 4. So that makes you feel any better. There you go. My prediction, San Francisco 27, Seattle 20. So I think the Niners squeak out covering the spread for whatever it's worth. Listen, could I see the Niners winning this game by 10, 13, 14, 17? Sure. But much like the Tampa game, and I was ready, I had them winning by 3 or 4, and that spread was 6.5 also. I am not going to predict a blowout until I've seen a blowout. And winning by 12 at Seattle, getting a big run at the end of the game, not a blowout to me. Beating a bad Patriots team or a bad Jets team, not a blowout to me. Someone made the statement, I think I saw it on Twitter, that the Niners haven't had a quality win all year. Well, guess what? This isn't the college football playoff. Quality wins don't matter. You play and you beat who's on your schedule to give yourself the best chance to win your division and give yourself the best possible seeding moving forward in the playoffs. But you know what's funny? Even if they had beaten the Cardinals and the Rams, they still wouldn't have a quality win on the season because the Rams would be 3-6 instead of 4-5. And instead of the Cardinals being 6-4, they'd be 5-5. So the Niners, even if they were 7-3 right now, right? Or 7-2, excuse me. They'd still would not have a win against a team above 500. Now, what would that mean? Nothing. It's just the way the schedule breaks, right? They have the talent on this team to play with anyone. Yes, they lost to the Chiefs by 10. They lost to the Vikings, right? And they obviously fell apart in the fourth quarter against the Rams and the Cardinals, which is a very bad look. I am banking on the fact that these last two games, Dallas and Tampa, Dallas got up big, had to hold on, had to dig deep at the end, had to get that 4 and out to get the win. Tampa up 10-0. That's obviously a death knell for this team. Can't be up by 10. Can't. 10-3. Punt return muff that happened inside their 25. Tampa scores. Tampa eventually takes the lead on them, but the Niners dig deep, get the lead back, have to overcome Jake Moody's 3 missed field goals, get a stop on defense when Tampa was driving for potentially the lead. They settle for the field goal to tie it at 20, and Brock goes down the field in less than 41 seconds, and Moody converts. Nothing, I've said it before, nothing's going to be easy for this team. I think I said it last on my podcast. They're keeping us like a midget at a urinal. We're going to be on our toes all game. Even when a lead looks safe, it's not unless it's a 4-score lead going into the fourth quarter. Then at that point, there's just not enough time, not enough possessions for a team really to come back. Because again, up 17 against Dallas, that's 3 scores. Dallas still had a chance. So 27-20, I'll take a 1-point victory. I don't care how much the Niners win by. But this is game 3 of a 3-game stretch that I feel were must wins, could win, should wins, must wins before they go to Green Bay. And then after that, Buffalo. And then they're home for some games, some winnable games, something like Chicago, the Rams, and they're at Arizona, at home for Detroit. They need this game. They need this NFC game. They need this NFC West game, an extremely winnable game. And if you want to call it tune-up game number 3, before they start punching up to Green Bay and Buffalo on the road, that's fine. And if this game is ugly too and they get the win, I'm even okay with that. I'd prefer a blowout, but I'd be totally okay with an ugly win to prove to the team again that they can win grimy, that they can. If it came back against Tampa, they got up and came back. They were up big against Dallas. They held on. However this goes against Seattle, Seattle gets up 10, 13, 14 off the bat and they come back. They're up big. Seattle comes back and they still win, or the game's close throughout and they hold on 3, 4, 7 points at the end. I'm going to look at these close, uncomfortable games because that's all they've played, except maybe the New England game. That's all this team has played. And if you want to say week 1 against the Jets, fine, when we thought the Jets were a good team. 7 out of their 9 games have been uncomfortable, one way or the other. I don't foresee this changing this week, but I would love to be wrong. But just get the victory, and if it's 27-20, I mean, I'm not putting money on an exact score. If they win by 7, that's great. That's kind of how I feel like it's going to fall. Get to 6-4, get another win in the NFC West, and then you're going to start to fight for your playoff lives. And it's not even a matter of speaking. We're going to go over this on the Thursday podcast. When you go to Green Bay, actually, I'll just tease it now. Get this win, get to 6-4. You're going to Green Bay. If on the off chance the Niners don't win the West and they have the chance at a wild card, Minnesota already has the tiebreaker on them. Let's assume Detroit wins the division in the North. Got to beat Green Bay to have that head-to-head tiebreaker on them if the Cardinals stay hot and they edge the Niners out for the NFC West. We're not going to talk about that for another week, but important, and all the more important to get this NFC West win on Sunday and draw even with Arizona at the top of the NFC West, even though the Cardinals have the tiebreaker. So that concludes the 49ers Plus podcast for this week. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. The NFL week kicks off tonight. It's actually kicked off already as I'm filming this. Commanders at Eagles. Good game. One of those teams is not going to win the East. And again, we'll be fighting for a wild card with not a lot of other teams, but a handful of other teams in the NFC. So excited to watch that. Whatever you guys are doing between now and Sunday, 4:05 Eastern time. Be happy, be healthy, and be safe. We will talk soon. Take care. Enjoy the game.